Friday, sports fans, which means one thing and one thing only. It's time for some WNBA today here on SportsGrid TV. And I have the pleasure of being your host, Kasey Hudson. But today I am joined by Dexter Henry, SNY, and the Post to get us going because we've got to break down a wild start to the finals. Game 1 went off, and then we've got to get ready for Game 2 and see what is in store between this exciting matchup. You guys already know where my loyalty lies. It's always going to be towards Minnesota. But Dexter here is going to help me not be as biased. He's going to help me run through all the stats and good lines and information. But first and foremost, Dex, happy Friday. How's it going? How are you feeling after that big Game 1?
Well, I was in the building for that big Game 1. A little bit disappointing for the New Yorkers like myself and the media there. A lot of people were stunned. You're not sorry, Kasey. We know you're not sorry. But I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Good. Hopefully you got some rest because I know it's emotionally taxing when you're sitting there and you're rooting for the home team and it feels like it's in the grasp. The victory is right there. So, of course, I've got to give your team some love because while I do tend to be biased and I can openly admit that, I can also give credit where credit is due. First quarter was all Liberty. They were outplaying the Lynx. Oh, pains me to say that. But they were outplaying them, putting up a 32-point performance in the first quarter compared to the Lynx 19 points. So talk to me about the fast start that you saw with the Lynx or with the Liberty last night and how the Lynx started to crawl their way back into it in that second quarter.
Yeah, so with the fast start, Kasey, the thing with the Liberty that has worked well for them all season long is that they were moving the ball really, really well. And I expected that since the Lynx only had a day of rest. The Liberty hadn't played since Sunday. I expected them to get out to this fast start, and we saw that. And you thought, Minnesota will be a little bit tired having to fly from Minnesota to New York. But the key for the Liberty in that first quarter was that they were moving the ball really well. They were finding Jonquel Jones on mismatches who was sealing off really well, and she was scoring inside, grabbing rebounds. She had 10 points and 3 rebounds after the first quarter. Now, you also asked what happened in the second quarter where Minnesota closed the gap a little bit and, in fact, even had cut it to 2 at one point in the third. Well, Minnesota really started applying pressure and looking like the team that we know that they are defensively. And I think that really changed the game. The Liberty got rattled. They got too comfortable in what they were doing. They weren't running their sets as efficiently as they could, and they weren't moving the ball with the same crispness. So you got to credit Minnesota for that because they really disrupted. They didn't hang their heads when they were down by as many as 18 points. They really battled back in this one. It was really defense that got them back in this game, especially late in the game. They were able to force turnovers, and that really changed the game for the Lynx and also for the Liberty.
Absolutely. Now, before we touch too much on the Lynx's defense and most importantly, the front runner for helping the Minnesota Lynx find success last night in that OT thriller, let's also talk about the fact that you mentioned Jones, but there was some isolations that came about when it came to Breanna Stewart's performance. Somebody who typically, she did find double digits, but I think she only sat at about 18 points, 9 rebounds, which is still tremendous, and 3 assists. But a lot of the books, especially FanDuel specifically, have her having a 20-plus performance. In Game 2, what did you see out of Stewart last night compared or going up against the Lynx?
She missed a lot of shots. I mean, we can get to the last shot of the game, which she absolutely should have hit and was pretty down about it after the game. But she missed a lot of easy shots that you thought were in rhythm for her. 6 of 21, so not a good shooting night from the field from Breanna Stewart. You expect her to be better. You talked about the books having her as a 20-plus point scorer. But I think one of the things we have to give respect to is we got to give respect to Nafisa Collier. Tremendous. Mm-hmm. She is the Defensive Player of the Year, had 3 blocks in this one. She made life difficult for Breanna Stewart, particularly in that second half. Still, with that said, I thought there were some looks that Stewie should have hit, and she just wasn't able to. She just seemed off rhythm all night. Now, you got to give the Liberty credit. They trusted her at the end. They went to her at the end, and particularly that last shot in overtime. She made a good move. You could tell Nafisa Collier didn't want to play as physical, especially the way we saw things were called at the end of regulation. But Stewie's got to hit that shot. Bad night for Stewie. I'm very intrigued to see how the former MVP bounces back in Game 2.
Yeah, and I think that's the scary part and why you can't count out the Liberty when it comes to game 2, because when she gets her snarl going, she's a pretty scary player to go up against, and she wasn't very happy with her own performance. And when you take that acknowledgement as an athlete, there's only one option and one option only, and that is to bounce back. Now, to continue to give credit where credit is due, this is somebody I had on my MVP list earlier in the season. Got a little banged up last night. I'm pretty sure I heard it was an ankle situation for Sabrina Ionescu, but 19 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. She's one of 4 players that got in that double-digit column. What'd you see out of her, and have you heard anything in terms of like what her injury may be and if that's going to hinder her come Sunday?
Haven't heard anything about the injury. I think we'll get more on that tomorrow in terms of when the teams have availability. So to hear about that, I think she will be good to go. I think she will be good to go with some rest here. They might hold her in practice tomorrow. But in terms of her performance, listen, the Liberty, they had 4 of their starters in double figures. However, Sabrina Ionescu, who's really been the engine for this team, if you look at it through this postseason, she also did not shoot the ball well. 8 for 26 from the field. That's not the kind of game that you want to see from Sabrina Ionescu. Now, she had some big threes in the first half, looked in rhythm. So did Leonie Fabich. But Sab just wasn't really able to get it going consistently. And another thing that you saw when you look at her, and she's going to have to adjust to this, Minnesota trapped her heavily in the second half, particularly, and tried to get the ball out of her hands. So somebody else is going to have to step up and be the playmaker. I would look for that to be Benajelani Hamilton. But I think Sab, her shot was off too. So when you have a struggle in terms of shooting nights from Sabrina Ionescu, from Stewie, that doesn't bode well from the Liberty. I know it looks good, and they had 4 players in the starting lineup in double figures. That looks nice, but look at the shooting. Liberty only shot 37% in this game. After they started off this game shooting well, they were winning the three-point battle, but they went cold in the second half, and that ended up hurting them. And it was disappointing on a night when they had 23 second chance points and they dominated on the glass. You expect better offensively and to come out with a win.
See, this is why your expertise is so needed, Dexter, because important things to point out there, especially because Ionescu did have that she was a part of that fast start. She had that commanding presence in the first quarter, but something Minnesota does well is make rapid adjustments, especially when it comes to bringing more aggression quarter by quarter. So let's kind of pivot over to what the Lynx did well. As I mentioned already, they were behind in that first quarter as Liberty controlled it from top to bottom, 32-19 being that comp there. But then second quarter bounced back in, 17-12 being the point differential. But the biggest thing coming up strong was not only the defense, it was Courtney Williams. What a freaking performance by this girl yesterday to make sure that this Lynx team had a chance to not only fight back into this game 1 being this level of hype, but to also secure the W for her team. I mean, she had a tremendous level of play yesterday, both offensively and defensively. What'd you see out of Williams?
Yeah, she was tremendous. Look, and her confidence has been growing at the point guard position throughout the playoffs. Remember, this is her first season under Cheryl Reeve playing point guard full-time. She's used to playing off the ball. And I think that's the thing, calm, under control, ice in her veins. The shot she hits, which is now, if this Lynx go to win the series, is going to be an iconic shot. This was a classic game last night where she gets a 4-point play. I mean, to miss the first 3, then come right back, no fear, and take that. She's been tremendous. We know about her game in the mid-range and how well she could be. But the way she's been shooting the 3 balls, particularly in the end of the last series against the Sun, and then now to start this series against the Liberty, she's been tremendous. And look, it's a player they have to key on. You can talk about Nafisa Collier, you can talk about Kayla McBride and how dangerous they are, but Courtney Williams is a player you have to worry about. She was the best backcourt player in the game last night. And if the Liberty are going to win, I've said this before the series, Kasey, I think that Sab has to be the best backcourt player, so she's got to come out and match Courtney Williams, who's also a menace on the other side of the ball defensively. But she was tremendous last night, running the show, also on defense, and then obviously hitting those big shots. And you just see her confidence level going up at the point guard spot.
Absolutely. I mean, literally game by game, you see her confidence just escalating. But most importantly, you said something that just is going to stick with me until this wraps up: the ice in her veins. It's not just the blonde hair that she's rocking. No, she just has this cool, calm, collected composure and confidence and this chip on her shoulder. I mean, she just seems unshakable no matter what the play may be. So more for Dexter and I to unpack on the other side of this break, which means you go absolutely nowhere. Stick with us here on SportsGrid.
He already has more than 1,000 yards. The last 3 running backs to win the Heisman, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, did not have more than 650 in their opening 5 games of the year. Ashton Genty on pace to strike the pose in December.
Statistics matter. Blow every record out of the water, and he will be a Heisman. Disgraceful performance by the head coach, not Gene.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the one. Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
Welcome back into WNBA Today here on SportsGrid TV. Kasey Hudson here with the pleasure of running you through Game 1, getting you ready for Game 2, but most importantly, it's not about me, it's about Dexter Henry joining me to break things down. We talked about some of the good and the bad that we saw in Game 1, more specifically chatting about New York. Now it's time to turn the table. We started to give some love to the ice-cold veins of Courtney Williams and what she's done for her team, and most importantly, what she's had to do for her team, because Collier has had to go into more of a defensive role to stop a team that's so hot offensively, which means somebody else had to step up. Another team having 4 double-digit shooters, and Courtney Williams is one of the 4, Kayla McBride being another one. But let's just talk about the fact that Collier walks away with 21 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists. You have Courtney Williams closing out the night, 23 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists herself with only 35 minutes of play. But the name that we haven't touched on yet, although you mentioned her briefly, Kayla McBride. Coach is usually on the show with us. This is somebody he's always giving a lot of love to, especially looking at some props with. So what did you see out of McBride in assists to Collier and Williams last night?
Yeah, I mean, well, she shot the ball really well. She had some big threes, some big-time threes, 4 of 7 from downtown, 6 of 11 from the field overall. And there were times where the Liberty missed her on rotations or the ball was swung to her, and she made them pay. So she's somebody I love to always give you a couple of threes a game. And if you can find her, over 2.5 threes, even you might want to play it to over 3.5 if you can find plus money there. I think that's always interesting with Kayla McBride because she can definitely hit it, and she's going to get some open looks because so much attention of the Liberty's defense is going to be paid to Fee. And then now I think Courtney Williams will get a little bit more of their respect and attention, especially from the outside, and she causes so much havoc when she penetrates. So it opens things up for Kayla McBride and Fee and Alyssa Smith and Bridget Carlton and the rest of the team. So much opens up for her there. So she's a person I love in terms of 3-pointers made in a game. I definitely keep my eye on Kayla McBride.
Absolutely, and that's the exact same advice that Coach would give us as well. Now, tell me if I'm being a little far-fetched here. You and I were talking during the break. I'm trying to get better at being more supportive of New York teams, but the theme of last night kind of seemed like whichever team was besties with the boards walked away with the W. Like, is that how that ended up playing out last night? Besties with the boards?
It's not how it ended up playing out last night. The Liberty dominated this game on the boards, and I mentioned earlier, Kasey, 23 second chance points. Usually when that happens, especially in this matchup, And I think when you talk to a lot of people, they thought that would be the key to this matchup. Whoever can win the boards here, who also can dominate in the paint, should win. That wasn't the case. And, one of the things is just looking at counting stats doesn't always tell the story in basketball sometimes, right? One of the things you have to worry about is taking care of the ball. And I think that was the big Achilles heel for the Liberty in this contest, also to go along with the poor shooting in the second half. Heading into the fourth quarter, it was 10 turnovers for the Minnesota Lynx compared to, I believe it was 4 or 5 for the Liberty. Minnesota didn't turn the ball over again the rest of the game. That's what you have to do to come back. They took care of their possessions, they hit their shots, and then they forced the turnovers, and they ended up winning the turnover battle because the Liberty finished this game with 11 turnovers compared to 10 for the Lynx. So despite their dominance on the board for the Liberty, the Lynx, they took better care of the ball, and they scored off of those turnovers, and that was really the difference in the game. One that came down to 2 points. That was another huge difference in this game. The Lynx just did a better job of taking care of the ball. And honestly, for the Liberty, Kasey, that's hurt them when they've lost games all year. A lot of it has been because they've been sloppy with the ball. And you saw that in the second half.
Yeah. See, I tried to be friendly to New York teams, and it just didn't work out. I did a good job in the first half there. I gave them roses for their board work, but I guess Besties did not pull off the W, obviously. But I love how you painted that picture, Dexter, because that's just going to set us up promptly for what we need to look forward to coming up game 2, Sunday, 3 o'clock. Now, obviously, turnovers have been a massive issue for Liberty, as you just mentioned there. Lynx do really good at being consistent in that area. So as we start foreseeing what to expect with game 2, what specifically do the Liberty need to do outside of the not having the turnovers and stuff like that in order to compete and manage this game for all 4 quarters, at least 3 of the 4, to try to pull off game 2 and tie up this series?
Well, a little bit is in what you just said there at the end, Kasey, right? It's play a complete game. That's what you didn't see from the Liberty last night. We started off this conversation talking about how great they looked in the first quarter in the top of this game, and then things fell apart. They have to play a complete game. They have to play a complete 40 minutes and bring that intensity on defense and really bring it to the Lynx. Now, look, I think they have to get out to a fast start. Barclays Center crowd, which was beautiful last night. It was a sellout there. They're going to be pumped up once again. They have to feed off the energy of this crowd if they want to even this up going to Minnesota. I'm a little intrigued to see how Minnesota comes out, because do they relax now that they did their job? They got the split they wanted on the road. How is that going to be? But for the Liberty, 1, you got to play a complete game. 2, you've got to, as we said, take care of the ball. And I'll also add 3, you have to make sure your stars have to play like stars. That's it. I expect Breanna Stewart, Sab, to play like the way they played for most of the playoffs. This was the first playoff loss for the Liberty at home. Their stars have been fantastic at home. And I think Sabrina Ionescu, what is going on with her health and how she shoots, is really going to be the difference. She's, in a way, the X factor. I like to say Jonquel Jones, but Jonquel Jones had a really strong game in this one. I think they need to establish her early again. But Liberty stars have to play like stars, play like the MVP level they played before, if they're going to do that and win this game. But I think it's taking care of the ball, stars playing like stars, and playing a complete 40 minutes.
Yeah, Ionescu's always been kind of my clutch maker for that one. So before we let you go, Dexter, any players specifically to watch outside of the stars that we have mentioned, or just anyone that you want fans to make sure that they are locked in on for game 2?
Yeah, a player I would say to lock in. I was locked in on this player for game 1. Jonquel Jones to record a double-double before game 1. I saw that at about plus 140. I think there's great value on her to do that then. This is a really good matchup for her, and Minnesota struggles a little bit with her, so I'd look for her. Also look for Betnijah Laney to get a little bit more involved, whether it's on rebounds or knocking down a couple of threes. She's someone, as a role player, I expect to have a bigger role in this contest in game 2.
Absolutely. Well, make sure you guys are following Dexter Henry, his expertise in many sports, not just basketball, over at Dexter Henry TV on X, Twitter, whatever you feel like calling it. We got more WNBA today coming at you after this quick break. But more importantly, Dexter, thank you for taking the time on a Friday to run through this slate with me to get us ready for game 2. Hopefully you can catch up on some rest. But you SportsGrid fans, don't go anywhere. Join me on the other side of this quick break.
He already has more than 1,000 yards. The last three running backs to win the Heisman, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, did not have more than 650 in their opening 5 games of the year. Ashton Genty on pace to strike the pose in December.
Statistics matter. Blow every record out of the water, and he will be a Heisman. Disgraceful performance by the head coach, not genius.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. Brady, I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the what? Obviously, Terrence Jennings Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
It is time for the last rally here on WNBA Today on SportsGrid TV with me, Kasey Hudson. And we just had Dexter Henry walk us through what he saw live in action on Game 1 for the WNBA Finals. And obviously, if you guys missed it, it was a strong first quarter by the New York Liberty. I mean, full control, dominance, and comparison point-wise, 32-19. And then the gas was completely let off by the Liberty and mashed by the Lynx, 17-12 being the point difference in the second quarter. And then after that, the defensive game came even more to life for the Minnesota Lynx, as well as the offensive game. But most importantly, Dexter pointed it out. It was the costly turnovers for the Liberty and the capitalization of the turnovers by the Lynx that pushed this game into overtime and secured a W. A star rising for the Lynx team is obviously Courtney Williams, and I love that Dexter mentioned ice in her veins. The composure, the confidence that she has game by game is going to be problematic for the New York Liberty as they look to tie up the series on Sunday. So what should we expect on Sunday? Well, Dexter mentioned it. We got to make sure that the Liberty can pull off 4 quarters of play. If they can do that, they can tie off this series. The talent is there. The top 4 shooters are there. Not turning over the ball and being careless is a crucial point for them to focus on. Hopefully, Ionescu is going to be healthy enough to play and contribute for her team. She's been my clutch player. She was in my running for MVP. So I would imagine as long as she's feeling up to it that she's going to try to have as big a game possible to support her team to tie the series up. So as we head into Game 3, that's going to be 3 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday. What are we looking at here? Well, first of all, we're looking at a 7-point spread, which I meant to ask Dexter how we feel about this spread, knowing that this game has the capability to be so close, because whether fatigue hits, whether it's a closer game because Minnesota doesn't rack up as many points and they try to get more defensively sound 4 quarters versus the second half of basketball, then I think the 7 spread is a little big for what to expect from all of these playmakers on both of these rosters. Regardless, you have got the Liberty coming into this as favorites to be able to tie the series off. Now, the total is sitting at 162.5. Something else I'm kind of steering clear of. Game 1's matchup went to a total of 188. Yes, I talked about the defensive elements for Minnesota. Yes, Dexter talked about the turnovers where Liberty gave away the ball. But here's the thing. I see one of two things happening. I see the Liberty, if they come out controlling the pace for 4 quarters, being able to rack up enough points to still hit this total over. Not to mention is that Minnesota can't get lax and become an overly defensive team. They're going to have to continue to find those strides to go play for play offensively. So I just think this 162 is something that's still going to be edged over. Even if we see like a 170 total, 162 just feels a little small for the showdown that should be expected for Game 2. Those are my thoughts when it comes to the spread and the total. We started talking about some players to watch on both of these amazing rosters. For one, Jones stepping up for her team. Again, Ionescu kind of had that shakeup there with the ankle, so losing some of that time on the court did not bang up her numbers. So she's somebody that we're going to touch on in a minute, but I expect Jones to still be that key person to step up and want to make sure that they're producing to get enough points on the board to help the Liberty push through. Sitting at plus money of 104 for 15 plus points, this kind of felt like a shoe-in over at FanDuel for a number of reasons. Jones is coming off of a performance with 24 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 assists. To have her at 15 plus points at plus money, that feels like a steal because she is going to have to be there for her team. She's going to have to try to get as close to 20 points as possible, and I think that she'll do it, especially if Stewart gets isolated again and Minnesota locks in on her too much. It's Jones and Ionescu for the rescue. Then for Stewart, she was only 2 points shy of hitting 20 points. This is another opportunity here, 20 plus points on FanDuel, minus 156. I think that Stewart finds a way to correct some of her mistakes from Game 1, which means we're going to see a number of points out of her as well. Some of those shots that she missed, I can't imagine her missing them 2 games in a row. So, take a big look at her for the 20 plus points. Then you got Ionescu. Keep health in mind, but the books do have her evaluated to be able to play on Sunday. Most importantly, we know she's going to try to push through for her team while she's banged up. She might not be on for 35 plus minutes, but we still might see enough action out of her. Over 4.5 rebounds feels like a lock-in for Ionescu and what she'll bring to the team. And then I'm going to focus on one person when it comes to Minnesota. I'm going to continue to ride the wave when it comes to Courtney Williams to record 6 plus rebounds, plus money of 172. She hit 5 in Game 1. So if she has to adjust her game by any means because Liberty is going to bring extra pressure, 6 rebounds should be a shoo-in for Courtney Williams. And Dexter and I both said it. Confidence continues to rise. Play continues to rise. 6 rebounds feels right in reach. So let us know your favorite plays for WNBA. Game 2 going down Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern time. But most importantly, join us back here on SportsGrid TV to break down all of the action-packed fun for WNBA Finals. Until next time, guys, I will see you back here on SportsGrid. We got college football this weekend. We got NFL. We got so much more. So you're going to want to stick with your favorite network for all sports coverage. And then for the WNBA today, I'll see you guys next Friday right back here on SportsGrid.
All right, everybody, it's time to make some deals here. George Kurtz and I have some buy lows and sell highs. Jalen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins, along with Tyreek Hill, you can put both these guys in the same bucket. They might have another down week here. If they do, you've got the bye and then another week to wait until you get to Tua Tagovailoa. I'm thinking long-term here. If I am a team right now that's sitting at 4-0, 3-1, and I get another win this week, to me, that's the perfect time to start looking ahead to the future and looking ahead specifically to those Dolphins wide receivers, because I do believe once Tua comes back, that those guys can go right back to being top fantasy performers. This is the window. It'll probably last, regardless of whatever they do this week, another week because of the looming bye, where people can't then start them in the frustration of that setting in, and maybe even the desperation of loss after loss as guys like Waddle and Hill are not returning their investment. So I'm buying both of these guys. Are you buying either Miami Dolphin wideout?
Now, this depends on what you believe in. Joe obviously believes that Tua is coming back after the bye. So do I. All right, but keep that in mind. There's been no word that this is definitive. All right, he's out of concussion protocol, so he's already passed that. He is talking to a million neurologists. Smart, that's what he should be doing here. But from what we've heard, no one's told him, no doctor's told him you should retire, or that you have to retire, due to these concussions. So I think Tua does return. I do. So yes, I would be willing to acquire. This is where you look at the pounds. All right, if you want Hill or Waddle, you're praying today's another dud, and then they have Wolf next week. And you look at the records. Oh, you're 1-4. You can't wait. You know, you can make a good deal here. All right, especially if you're a team that's 4-1, 5-0, whatever it might be.